Hello and welcome to today's Lunchtime Nugget, where I take a portion of my lunch, typically, and share it with you. But today I'm recording at my house this weekend with my oldest daughter, Mariah. Say hello you're officially the first guest on the Lunchtime Nugget. This week at our church's revival meetings, we typically would be having revival meetings in person, but we are on this COVID-19 thing, and so we are having online revival meetings. And I spoke recently at our church, an adult roundtable, about the subject of what is revival. And it's something that I happen to be passionate about, and I really like talking about it. And so I am going to talk about it for a minute. Ryan's going to stand there and look pretty. All right? No, use it for illustration. So let's think about this. If Mariah right now physically just passed out, I mean, she just died. Thank you. And the camera were to fall down and follow me, and I were to revive her, I'd probably try to give her the CPR and do those type of things, and I would try to get her back to life. You would know she was revived when you saw her breathing again. That's how you know she was revived. So how do you know if someone is revived spiritually? How do you know? Well, the Bible tells us in the New Testament that there are some things that are just considered normal. It's just what ought to be in your life. So let me list them real quick. In your life, Mariah, me, all of us Christians, we ought to show the fruit of the Spirit. Can you name any of the fruit of the Spirit, Mariah?
Love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance.
That's it. 9. Good. Wow, she's hammered that. I did not tell her beforehand. But those fruit of the Spirit is supposed to be evident in our lives, just typically, just normal. But so often, we often see the opposite of that. I won't have her list the opposites, but selfishness, worry, anger, short-temperedness, no self-control. The opposites is what we typically see. Why is that? Well, because we need revival. We need to get back to normal, where we're supposed to be. Do you know a boldness to see people saved is part of the normal Christian life? So often we're too timid to tell people. Absolute surrender to God's will instead of, I'm going to do whatever I want. Eagerness to read God's word instead of, I have to. A victory over sin instead of just, I got to live in this sin all the time. Motives to do things out of love, kind of like when your dad says, hey, go take the trash out, and you say, hey, Dad, yeah, because I love you, instead of, that would be the flesh. But it ought to be that when we do things like church and prayer and reading our Bible, it ought to be the joy and not the frustration. There's proper roles in the home, like husbands love your wives, wives submit to your husbands. And what about the children, Mariah? You know this verse. Obey your authority. Very good. And so that would be another one. A proper use of spiritual gifts and separation from the world and sin. Those are things that God says is just normal. But so often we as Christians are not doing those things. And that's why we need revival. We need to be brought back to normal, just like physically. If Mariah were to pass out or lose consciousness, I would try to revive her physically. We all understand that. But we need to get back to New Testament Christian living. We got to get back to normal. We need revival. One author I read says this. He says, a church that needs to be revived is a church that is living below the norm of New Testament pattern. Its members who need to be quickened are living a subnormal Christian life. We need revival. That's what God tells us so often. There's been a lot of great revivals in history. One of them took place in Wales. I've actually been to Wales on a missions trip. One of them took place in Wales, and a London newspaper sent 2 reporters out to Wales to kind of report on the Welsh revival. And they began to look for large gatherings when they got there, because they assumed that the revival meant there's going to be large gatherings, but they couldn't find them. So they stopped a policeman, and they told the policeman, they asked him, they said, where's this Welsh revival taking place? And the policeman humbly smiled and pointed at his heart, and he said, revival's taking place right underneath this uniform. Gypsy Smith, who used to say this, do you want revival? He would say, go outside, draw a big circle on the ground, and step inside that circle and pray, God, revive everything in this circle. Because he understood we need revival. So, Mariah, what is revival again? Getting back to what?
Getting back to
normal. Good job. We should have rehearsed that. So my question is this for you today, this lunchtime nugget. Are you living the normal Christian life? I'm not saying normal is compared to some other person. Normal is compared to what does God want from you? What does the New Testament say? And do we meet that? And if not, we need revived. And you can watch this week on our church, Faith Baptist Church of Cunot. We've got a YouTube page. We've got an online chat going on with it. We've got a Facebook page. We're watching it. We'd love to have you join us and watch it. But for today, thank you for watching this Pulpit to Pew Lunchtime Nugget. First ever guest appearance by my oldest daughter, Mariah McClure. She is one of the voices behind the Pulpit to Pew podcast. You've never seen the face behind the introduction of the Pulpit to Pew podcast? This is her.
Me.
So thank you for joining us today.